everything I would change about the game. Maybe I would like just give it slow. Seems like you move a little slower. Maybe I should get rid of the slow movement speed. It feels slightly slower, but it might not be. I don't think I would change anything about the roses. I'd say they're fairly balanced. Maybe change their all their stuns, because they literally have 2 stuns. Like, Jesus Christ, do you need 2 stuns on one character? And an ability that gives invincibility. Jesus Christ. Citron, I would make it so that the EMP doesn't do any damage on, doesn't do a damage over time, because I feel like the stun on its own is fine enough, but the damage is a little bit overkill. So maybe I'd buff. If Frozen Citron has a lower fire rate than the standard characters, I would buff the fire rate a little bit. And for Electro Citron, I would decrease the damage drop off on them. Because you have to be basically point blank to do like 12 damage. It's like, I have to go up close. That does 4 damage from that range. Well, I guess it did ramp up the damage a little bit more. I guess I just lowered the damage drop off a little bit because I'm really doing a standard Citron without using electric. Another thing I'd do for Fire Rose is make her second charge just a shorter version of the normal fully charged. For Barbecue Corn, I would just revert the damage nerf they did to him. Because they don't need to nerf every single aspect of every fire character. Like, this corn has 30 ammo. 35 with the damage upgrade. I mean, ammo upgrade. Like, Barbecue Corn has less mag. And does less damage. Like, I remember when Barbecue Corn did like 7 damage at close. And those were the days when he was actually good. Like, they don't need to nerf every single aspect of all the fire characters. Like, he used to do like 6 to 5, maybe like 7 damage up close. Like, he doesn't need to do that little damage. Like, damage drop-off and less mag is already good enough of a nerf. They don't need to nerf him that much. Mob Cobb. I would lower his damage a little bit and give him a faster fire rate. Because I don't think he really need, like, the only thing he has going for him over the standard variant is he has less damage drop off. But he has a slightly slower fire rate, I think. Like, the standard Kernel Corn has so much faster fire rate. That's really cool. See, like, look how much faster that is. And they do about the same damage. But Mob Cop has less damage drop off. I feel like that's kind of unnecessary. I think for Popscorn, I would probably just lower the zoom. Because I don't think having more zoom is more of a hindrance than a help. Because maybe like increase the zoom a little bit. Although he does pretty good damage. I think that's all I would change. Maybe Commandicorn, give him a little bit more damage when he's in his mode. Because I don't see why he should get a gigantic mag when he already has 2 reload upgrades. That feels unnecessary. Fire P, I would buff his... I would increase his close range damage to 30 and nerf his splash damage to 5. And Toxic P, I would lower his splash to 8 and buff his up close damage to 30, maybe 33 on direct hits. Commandicorn, Commando P, I don't think I would change anything about him. Maybe lower his damage drop off a little bit at range. Agent P, I think Agent P is in a good spot. He's pretty strong. He's fairly hard to use. Loppy, I don't think I would change anything about him. Plasma P, like, when you shoot a charge shot, that's a double explosion. And I think they should nerf the damage of that a little bit. So like, that's like 30 damage or so. You know, I guess maybe that wouldn't be too good of a change. Rock P, I would buff his fire rate to his, I believe his close range damage is like about 27 or so. I need to test this out. How much damage does this do? And it's 22. Wait, where's the extra damage? Okay, so just 12. Is this 32? No, I guess maybe that's not really a good change. Also, another thing I would change is change the damage numbers on direct hits. Because it's kind of dumb how it doesn't show you all the damage you get out of a single shot on some characters like Rock P, Captain Squawk, and AC Parry, Chomper. I don't think I would change anything about the default Chomper. Fire Chomper, I just buff his damage to 10. He does 8 damage. I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to nerf it down to 8 damage, because now he's basically just a weaker version of Electric Chomper, in my opinion. There's no reason to play him over. Like it does 8 damage. I don't think it's really necessary to nerf him that much. I feel like 10 damage would be more fair. There's not really much reason to play Fire Chomper over Acid Chomper in my opinion. I just don't really feel like there's much. Fire Chomper is kind of pointless considering, or I could be wrong. That might be a bad change. Power Chomper, I don't think I would change anything about him. I'd say he's fairly bad. Power Chomper, I think I'd buff his damage to maybe 12 or 13. Maybe 11. Counter Chomper, he's in a good spot. Toxic Jumper, he's in a good spot. Armor Chomper. Maybe I'd buff his health back up to where he used to be, maybe? Yeah, how many health? He gets 1, 2. So you can buff his health. Yeah, I don't think I'd change anything. Jumping is in a good spot. Yeti Chomper. I buffed his up close damage to like 40. And get rid of the damage upgrade on him. Like, I don't see why you should have an ice upgrade and a damage upgrade on a single character. I think that's pretty stupid in my opinion. Like he does. Like he does 34. At point blank, he does like 34. I don't see why I don't think he should. I feel like PopCap has a problem with missing the elemental damage. Just a little too much. Ooh. I didn't realize that was there. Although I quite like Yeti Chomper. Disco Chomper, I would nerf his, I would decrease how long I would lower the, digestion time by a second when he gets in his mode. Because I just don't feel like it really makes much sense to have a character, a legendary Chomper that's based on chomping people, yet chomping people to fill up his mode, yet when he gets into his mode, he doesn't have a faster digestion time. I think that doesn't make any sense, in my opinion. Especially when Toxic Brains can do like 180 damage with all 3 punches in his mode. Twilight Chomper, I wouldn't change anything. But I would make for what's it called, Chomper? What's the name? I forgot the name. Unicorn Chomper. For Unicorn Chomper, I would give max rings. I would make it so that max rank players in this game get Unicorn Chomper. Because I think it just doesn't really make much sense. Yeah, you have to get to max rank in Garden Warfare 1 for a limited amount of time to get Unicorn Chomper. Like, why do you have to do it in the first game? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, it doesn't make any sense why, if they made it so getting the max rank in Garden Warfare 1, you get Unicorn Chomper, but when you get to max rank in Garden Warfare 2, it doesn't give you Unicorn Chomper. I think that's kind of ridiculous and doesn't really make any sense. I don't think I would change anything. Fire Sunflower, I'd buff the firing a little bit. Because I don't feel like it really makes a whole lot of sense to nerf almost every aspect of the fire characters. And just make the stock Sunflowers overall better than their normal variant. Plus, if you take in consideration that like characters like Alien Flower and Mystic Sunflower, they're basically better than and Sunpharaoh. And Shadow Sunflower exists, I don't feel like it really makes a whole lot of sense to just straight up nerf fire characters when there's already other characters that are straight up upgrades to the stock move. It just seems kind of unnecessary. Like the normal Sunflower has 50 ammo, 60 with upgrade. And Fire Sunflower has 30. Like there's no need to nerf her at all. It just seems a lot overkill. Power Flower, I think I would buff her damage up a little bit because there's no reason to play her over pretty much every other Sunflower in the game. And I would buff the fire rate of Metal Travel a little bit. Like, why can't you just make normal characters, armored versions, just nerf their damage and give them a little bit more damage drop off? That just seems kind of unnecessary to me. And I don't think I would change any of these other Sunflowers. Fire Cactus, I'd buff the fire rate to this, or maybe make them shoot slightly slower than their standard, than their stock characters. Ice Cactus, I would either buff the fire rate or lower the damage drop off on her, because I feel like Ice Cactus doesn't really do enough damage at long range in my opinion. Power Cactus, maybe buff her damage to 25 or 26 a little bit. Future Cactus, I wouldn't change. Camo Cactus, I'd say maybe buff the damage to 70. My reasoning being is buff the damage to 70 and buff the non-critical damage to like 42 or 50, because the problem I have with Camo Cactus is Camo Cactus struggles a lot against tankier characters, and I feel like that extra damage would be nice to help combat against them, because once a Super Brains knows where you are when you're playing Camo Cactus, maybe you'll get like 90 damage or so, like a crit and a body shot. By the time they get to you, you're pretty much completely fricked up against players that know what they're doing. Bandit Cactus, I would just buff her mag size to maybe like 30 or 40. Jade Cactus, I'd buff the fire rate of it a little bit, or maybe buff the mag size. Zen Cactus, I would give her a little bit more damage. So her first shot does 20, 30, 40, 50, and her last shot does 60. Maybe like give 66, 55, 44, 33, and 22 damage, based on how much damage they do. Petrified Cactus, I think I would nerf the damage down to 20. Or maybe a little bit lower. Maybe 15 or 18. Oh, I can't believe I forgot to talk about Electric P. I would nerf the fire rate down to, I would nerf the damage down to 15 or maybe a little bit lower. And the problem I have with Electropy is when he's in Hyper. There's almost nothing you can do against Electropy in Hyper unless you're playing as Engineer or an Imp, where you can Gravity Grenade or stun them in any way. That's like the only way you can really deal with an Electropy. If you're playing as any other zombie character, you're completely fricked. I hate the people who play Electropy really scumbagly, where they just always use hyper whenever the first time they see you. They just use hyper. There's almost nearly nothing you can do with most characters, and it feels really scummy. I would make it so hyper. I would either nerf. I would make it so it doesn't jump. Like, you don't jump extremely high when you use this ability. It just makes you go faster. That would make super P jump actually useful. Or I would make it so that cut the time. I would cut the time in half on P shooter. Cut the time in half on hyper. Because it lasts just a little bit too long, in my opinion. Because, like, you get 4 jumps. Like 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, you get 4 jumps out of it. And when you compare it to the zombies version of the ability, like Rocket League, you get only 2. Like, why do you get only 2? When, like, Hyper is an upgrade to Rocket Leap in almost every way. It just doesn't really make any sense. And for Torchwood, I don't think I would change anything about Torchwood personally. I'd say all of his abilities are fairly balanced. Like, his Fire Breath ability, just keep your distance and use a ranged character. But maybe Smoldering Madness would be on the side of being more unbalanced. But Leaf Shield, I'd say, is a fairly balanced. Considering, like, there's Z-Mechs in the game that probably have more health. So Torchwood has like about 550 health when he gets into his ability.
Hey, Aiden.
What?
We made sandwiches and have a tea for you.
Oh yeah, thanks. For zombie side, I would buff the bullet speed on the Drake, because it's so hard to aim because of how slow his bullet speed is. For Pylon Imp, I would just increase his splash a little bit, because he's like well, maybe increase his damage a little bit to like 50. No, wait, actually no. Make it so body shots count as crits, like for P shooters. Because then that would make them a lot easier to play. Because you have to aim for crits to do like 50 damage, and that's insanely hard when you have to move around and constantly dodge enemy projectiles, depending on the enemy you're going against. Shrimp. I would just lower the recoil, the reticle bloom when he's firing. Because I don't understand why they buff the recoil, the reticle bloom when you're shooting things. I feel like that's kind of unnecessary. Like, the point of Shrimp is he's supposed to be a more accurate version that does a little bit more damage per shot. Z7 Imp I wouldn't change because he's in a good spot. Or maybe lower his magazine size a little bit. Party Imp, I don't think I would change anything about him. For Cosmic Brains, I would just make it so his mid-air punches are more consistent. Because like charging your punches in midair is, yeah, you see it work. Like, it doesn't, for some reason they thought it was a good idea to not show that you're charging your punches. Like Cosmic Brain is so buggy. I would also make it so that you can both charge your punches in midair and hold your charges while you're throwing people. Because you kinda can hold your charges sometimes, but it's just very inconsistent. We need to make it. And also make it so you can punch in midair. Electro Brain. Maybe buff his damage a little bit on his last punch. Toxic Brains. I don't think I would do anything to Toxic Brains. Same with Party Brains. I'd probably nerf the pull the pin explosions down to 20 or lower. Captain Flameface just buff his fire rate. Same for most fire characters in the game. Captain Sharkbite, he needs a gimmick that makes him more interesting other than just having more splash. Because he's not really all that interesting. It's pretty much just the standard but with less ammo. And with splash damage, I feel like that's kind of unnecessary. Captain Partyman. I think I would buff his damage to like his crit damage to 30 and like non-crit damage to like 20. I don't see why he should just do 25 damage. Because in most scenarios, the standard version is better. Like, the point of the party characters is just to have, like, an upgrade to the stock characters, when he's not really much of an upgrade. Foot Soldier, I don't think I would change. I wouldn't change anything about him. I would buff. I buffed fire rate because he already has enough nerfs in his base kit that are mostly unnecessary. Tank Commander. I'd probably make his bullet speed a little bit faster because it's very hard to use. That'd make him a little bit more powerful. I don't think I would change anything about General Supremo because he's pretty much has some of the highest DPS of all the Foot Soldier range. Ammo Ranger. I would probably replace the penetration upgrade to something else because those upgrades are mostly useless most of the time. I don't think I would change anything about Sky Trooper because he's basically an upgrade to the stock variant. Centurion just buffs with fire rate. Like, they don't need to give that many, like, he has 12 mag, 14 when upgraded. And the closest character to him, like, He gets like 18 foot size. Plus, from the shot itself, he does 12 damage and for crits, and 10 for non-critical. Arc Ranger, I don't think I would change anything about it. Scuba Soldier, maybe make his bullet speed a little bit faster. The quicker bullet speed would make him a little easier to use. And I think that's all. I'll make a part 2